The AIM-9 sidewinder, AIM for Air Intercept Missile, is a short-range air-to-air missile. Entering service with the United States Navy in 1956 and the Air Force in 1964, the AIM-9 is one of the oldest, cheapest, and most successful air-to-air missiles. Its latest variants remain standard equipment in most Western-aligned air forces. The Soviet K-13 AA-2 Atoll, a reverse-engineered copy of the AIM-9B, was also widely adopted. Low-level development started in the late 1940s, emerging in the early 1950s as a guidance system for the modular Zuni rocket. This modularity allowed for the introduction of newer seekers and rocket motors, including the AIM-9C variant, which used a semi-active radar homing and served as the basis of the AGM-122 sidearm anti-radar missile. Originally a tail-chasing system, early models saw extensive use during the Vietnam War, but had a low success rate. This led to all-aspect capability in the L version, which proved an effective weapon during the Falklands War and Operation Mole Cricket 19, Bekaa Valley Turkey Shoot, in Lebanon. Its adaptability has kept it in service over newer designs like the AIM-95 Agile and SRAM that were intended to replace it. The Sidewinder is the most widely used air-to-air missile in the West, with more than 110,000 missiles produced for the U.S. and 27 other nations, of which perhaps 1% have been used in combat. It has been built under license by Sweden and other nations. The AIM-9 has an estimated 270 aircraft kills. In 2010, Boeing won a contract to support Sidewinder operations through 2055. Air Force spokeswoman Stephanie Powell said that its relatively low cost, versatility, and reliability mean it is very possible that the Sidewinder will remain in Air Force inventories through the late 21st century. Design. The Sidewinder is not guided by the actual position recorded by the detector, but by the change in position since the last sighting. So if the target remained at 5 degrees left between two rotations of the mirror, the electronics would not output any signal to the control system. Consider a missile fired at right angles to its target. If the missile is flying at the same speed as the target, it should lead it by 45 degrees, flying to an impact point far in front of where the target was when it was fired. If the missile is traveling 4 times the speed of the target, it should follow an angle about 11 degrees in front. In either case, the missile should keep that angle all the way to interception, which means that the angle that the target makes against the detector is constant. It was this constant angle that the Sidewinder attempted to maintain. This proportional pursuit system is straightforward to implement and offers high-performance lead calculation almost for free, and can respond to changes in the target's flight path, which is much more efficient and makes the missile lead the target. History 1. Origins. During World War II, various researchers in Germany designed infrared guidance systems of various complexity. The most mature development of these, codenamed Hamburg, was intended for use by the Blohm-Voss BV-143 glide bomb in an anti-ship role. Hamburg used a single IR photocell as its detector, along with a spinning disc with lines painted on it, alternately known as a reticle or chopper. The reticle spun at a fixed speed, causing the output of the photocell to be interrupted in a pattern, and the precise timing of the resulting signal indicated the bearing of the target. Although Hamburg and similar devices like Madrid were essentially complete, the work of mating them to a missile had not been carried out by the time the war ended. In the immediate post-war era, Allied military intelligence teams collected this information, along with many of the engineers working on these projects. Several lengthy reports on the various systems were produced and disseminated among the Western aircraft firms, while a number of the engineers joined these companies to work on various missile projects. By the late 1940s, a wide variety of missile projects were underway, from huge systems like the Bell-Bomy rocket-powered bomber to small systems like air-to-air missiles. By the early 1950s, both the U.S. Air Force and Royal Air Force had started major IR-seeker missile projects. The development of the Sidewinder missile began in 1946 at the Naval Ordnance Test Station, NOTS, in Yokern, California, now the Naval Air Weapons Station, China Lake, as an in-house research project conceived by William B. McLean. McLean initially called his effort Local Fuse Project 602, using laboratory funding, volunteer help, and fuse funding to develop what they called a heat-homing rocket. The name Sidewinder was selected in 1950 and is the common name of Crotalus cerastus, a rattlesnake, which uses infrared sensory organs to hunt warm-blooded prey. It did not receive official funding until 1951, when the effort was mature enough to show to Admiral William Deke Parsons, the Deputy Chief of the Bureau of Ordnance, BUORD. It subsequently received designation as a program in 1952. Originally called the Sidewinder 1, the first live firing was on 3 September 1952. The missile intercepted a drone for the first time on 11 September 1953. The missile carried out 51 guided flights in 1954, and in 1955 production was authorized. In 1954, the U.S. Air Force carried out trials with the original AIM-9A and the improved AIM-9B at the Holloman Air Development Center. The first operational use of the missile was by Grumman F-9F-8 Cougars and FJ-3 Furies of the United States Navy in the middle of 1956. First-generation rear aspect variants, nearly 100,000 of the first-generation AIM-9B CDE of the Sidewinder, were produced with Raytheon and General Electric as major subcontractors. Philco Ford produced the guidance and control sections of the early missiles. The NATO version of the first-generation missile was built under license in Germany by Bodenseewerk Gerätetechnik. 9,200 examples were built. Combat debut, Taiwan Strait, 1958. The first combat use of the Sidewinder came on 24 September 1958 by the Republic of China, Taiwan, Air Force during the Second Taiwan Strait Crisis. At the time, ROCAF North American F-86 Sabres were routinely engaged in air battles with the People's Republic of China over the Taiwan Strait. In similar fashion to Korean War encounters between the F-86 and earlier MiG-15, high-flying PRC MiG-17s cruised above the ROC Sabres, immune to their 50 cal guns and only fighting when conditions favored them. In a highly secret effort, the United States provided a few dozen Sidewinders to ROC forces and an aviation ordnance team from the U.S. Marine Corps to modify their aircraft to carry the Sidewinder. In the first encounter on 24 September 1958, ROCAF pilots used the Sidewinders to ambush the MiG-17s as they flew past, thinking they were invulnerable to attack. This action marked the first successful use of air-to-air missiles in combat, the downed MiGs being their first casualties. During the Taiwan Strait battles of 1958, a ROCAF AIM-9B hit a PLAF MiG-17 without exploding. The missile lodged in the airframe of the MiG and allowed the pilot to bring both plane and missile back to base. Soviet engineers later said that the captured Sidewinder served as a university course in missile design and substantially improved Soviet air-to-air capabilities. They reverse-engineered a copy of the Sidewinder, which was manufactured as the Wimpel K-13R3S missile, NATO reporting name AA-2 Atoll. The Wimpel K-13 entered service with Soviet Air Forces in 1960. Vietnam War Service, 1965-1973. Performance of the 454 Sidewinders launched during the war was not as satisfactory as hoped. Both the USN and USAF studied the performance of their air crews, aircraft, weapons, training, and supporting infrastructure. The USAF conducted the classified Red Baron report, while the Navy conducted a study concentrating primarily on performance of air-to-air weapons that was informally known as the ALT report. Both services subsequently modified their AIM-9s to improve performance and reliability. Later generation all-aspect variants AIM-9L. The next major advance in IR sidewinder development was the AIM-9 Lima model, which was in full production in 1977. This was the first all-aspect sidewinder with the ability to attack from all directions, including head-on, which had a dramatic effect on close-in combat tactics. Its first combat use was by a pair of U.S. Navy F-14s in the Gulf of Sidra in 1981 versus two Libyan Sukhoi Su-22s, both of the latter being destroyed by AIM-9Ls. Its first use in a large-scale conflict was by the United Kingdom during the 1982 Falklands War. In this campaign, the Lima reportedly achieved kills from 80% of launches, a dramatic improvement over the 10-15% levels of earlier versions, scoring 17 kills and 2 shared kills against Argentine aircraft. AIM-9M. The AIM-9M is an improved AIM-9L, having better background rejection and infrared countermeasures, discrimination, and a low smoke motor to reduce the visual signature of the weapon. Deployed in large numbers during the 1991 Gulf War, the AIM-9M was responsible for all 10 sidewinder kills recorded during that conflict. BOA box office China-like developed an improved compressed carriage control configuration titled BOA. Compressed carriage missiles have smaller control surfaces to allow more missiles to fit in a given space. The surfaces may be permanently clipped or may fold out when the missile is launched. AIM-9X. Hughes Electronics was awarded a contract for development of the AIM-9X Sidewinder in 1996 after a competition against Raytheon for the next short-range aerial combat missile, though Raytheon purchased the defense portions of Hughes Electronics the following year. The AIM-9X entered service in November 2003 with the USAF. The lead platform was the F-15C, and the USN. The lead platform was the FA-18C, and is a substantial upgrade to the Sidewinder family featuring an imaging infrared focal plane array, FPA, seeker, with claimed 9-degree off-bore sight capability, compatibility with helmet-mounted displays such as the new U.S. Joint Helmet-Mounted Cooling System, JHMCS, and a totally new two-axis thrust vectoring control, TVC system, providing increased turn capability over traditional control surfaces, 60 Gs. Utilizing the JHMCS, a pilot can point the AIM-9X missile's seeker and lock on by simply looking at a target, thereby increasing air combat effectiveness. It retains the same rocket motor, fuse, and warhead of the AIM-9M, but its lower drag gives it improved range and speed. The AIM-9X also includes an internal cooling system, eliminating the need for use of launch rail nitrogen bottles, U.S. Navy and Marines, or internal argon bottles, USF. It also features an electronic safe and arm device similar to the AMRAAM, allowing for a reduction in minimum range and reprogrammable infrared counter-measures, IRCCM, capability, that coupled with the FPA provides improved look-down into clutter and performance against the latest IRCM. Though not part of the original requirement, the AIM-9X demonstrated potential for lock-on after-launch capability, allowing for possible internal use for the F-35, F-22 Raptor, and even in a submarine-launched configuration for use against ASW platforms. The AIM-9X has been tested for a surface attack capability, with mixed results. Block 2 testing work on the AIM-9X. Block 2 version began in September 2008. The Block 2 adds lock-on after-launch capability with a data link, so the missile can be launched first, and then directed to its target afterwards by an aircraft with the proper equipment for 360-degree engagements, such as the F-35 or the F-22. By January 2013, the AIM-9X Block 2 was about halfway through its operational testing and performing better than expected. Navair reported that the missile was exceeding performance requirements in all areas, including lock-on after launch, low L. One area where the Block 2 needs improvement is helmetless high off-bore sight, HJOBS performance. It is functioning well on the missile, but performance is below that of the Block Y AIM-9X. The HHOB's deficiency does not impact any other Block II capabilities and is planned to be improved upon by a software cleanup build. Objectives of the operational test were due to be completed by the third quarter of 2013. However, as of May 2014, there have been plans to resume operational testing and evaluation, including surface-to-air missile system compatibility. As of June 2013, Raytheon had delivered 5,000 AIM-9X missiles to the armed services. On 18 June 2017, after an AIM-9X did not successfully track a targeted Syrian Air Force Su-22 fitter, U.S. Navy Latay SIMDR, Michael Mob Trammell, flying a FA-18E Super Hornet, used an AMRAAM-AM to successfully destroy the enemy aircraft. There is a theory that the sidewinder is tested against American and not Soviet-Russian flares. The sidewinder is used to rejecting American but not Soviet-Russian flares. The sidewinder is used to rejecting American but not Soviet-Russian flares. Similar issues arose from the testing of the AIM-9P model. The missile would ignore American flares but go for Soviet ones due to these flares have different burn time, intensity, and separation. In February 2015, the U.S. Army successfully launched an AIM-9X Block II from the new Multi-Mission Launcher, MML, a truck-mounted missile launch container that can hold 15 of the missiles. The MML is part of the Indirect Fire Protection Capability Increment to Intercept, IFPC Inkitesta 2I, to protect ground forces against cruise missile and unmanned aerial vehicle threats. The AIM-9X Block II has been determined by the Army to be the best solution to cruise missile and UAV threats because of its passive imaging infrared seeker. The MML will complement the Antui-Q1, Avenger Air Defense System, and is expected to begin fielding in 2019. Block III. In September 2012, Raytheon was ordered to continue developing the Sidewinder into a Block III variant, even though the Block II had not yet entered service. The USN projected that the new missile would have a 60% longer range, modern components to replace old ones, and an insensitive munitions warhead, which is more stable and less likely to detonate by accident, making it safer for ground crews. The need for the AIM-9 to have an increased range was caused by digital radio frequency memory, DRFM, jammers that can blind the onboard radar of an AIM-120D AMRAAM. So the Sidewinder Block III's passive imaging infrared homing guidance system was seen as a useful alternative. Although it could supplement the AMRAAM for beyond visual range, BVR, engagements, it would still be capable of performing within visual range, WVR. Modifying the AIM-9X was seen as a cost-effective alternative to developing a new missile in a time of declining budgets. To achieve the range increase, the rocket motor would have a combination of increased performance and missile power management. The Block III would leverage the Block II's guidance unit and electronics, including the AMRAAM-derived data link. The Block III was scheduled to achieve initial operational capability, IOC, in 2022, following the increased number of F-35 Lightning II Joint Strike Fighters to enter service. The Navy pressed for this upgrade in response to a projected threat, which analysts have speculated will be due to the difficulty of targeting upcoming Chinese fifth-generation jet fighters, Chengdu J-20, Shenyang J-31, with the radar-guided AMRAAM. Specifically, that Chinese advances in electronics will mean Chinese fighters will use their ASA radars as jammers to degrade the AIM-120's kill probability. However, the Navy's FY 2016 budget canceled the AIM-9X Block III as they cut down buys of the F-35C, as it was primarily intended to permit the fighter to carry 6 BVR missiles. The insensitive munition warhead will be retained for the AIM-9X program. Sidewinder descendants anti-tank variant Naval Air Weapons Station, China Lake, experimented with Sidewinders in the air-to-ground mode, including use as an anti-tank weapon. Starting from 2008, the AIM-9X demonstrated its ability as a successful light, air-to-ground missile. In 2016, Diehl closed a deal with the Federal Office of Bundeswehr Equipment, Information Technology and In-Service Support to develop a laser-guided air-to-ground variant of the Sidewinder missile based on the AIM-9L variant. In testing with the Swedish Defense Materiel Administration, a Saab Gripen could hit one stationary and two moving targets. On 28 February 2018, the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps unveiled an anti-tank derivative of the Sidewinder missile named Azaraksh, intended for use by Bell AH-1J Sea Cobra attack helicopters. Later developments. Larger rocket motor. Under the High Altitude Project, engineers at China Lake mated a Sidewinder warhead and seeker to a Sparrow rocket motor to experiment with usefulness of a larger motor. Other ground launch platforms. In 2016, the AIM-9X was test-fired from a multi-mission launcher at the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico, USA. During testing with the MML, the AIM-9X experienced issues with overheating. These issues have since been resolved. In September 2021, the U.S. Army signed a contract with Dynetics to build prototypes for its Indirect Fires Protection Capability, IFPC, utilizing an MML-based launcher firing the Sidewinder to counter UAVs and cruise missiles. It is planned to be put into service in 2023. In May 2019, the AIM-9X Block 2 was test-fired from the National Advanced Surface to Air Missile System, NASAMS, at the Andøya Space Center in Norway. Starting in late 2022, the United States has tried to adapt older AIM-9M Sidewinders into a surface-to-air missile system, part of a wider program known as FrankenSam,